So writing, they actually talked about what they got last time, and they said like half the class didn't do well and half the class did well. Everyone here must do well. I'm controlling for that. I think I've got on reviews before from classes that actually gave reviews that I give you enough rope to save yourself or hang yourself, depending on how you take it, right? So I'm looking at all of you and saying, look, everything's laid out for you. If you follow those directions, it should go 100% correctly. I've already controlled for the research question, so that one I gave everybody 25 points on for changing it and making it so that's something that's doable. The first part is you have your title, you have your name, you have everybody's project draft has to be written individually. That's in the directions. And I want you to write it in this way because if everyone gets perfect scores, I want to be able to pick them up and say, look, this is what they did. So if somebody comes back and says, hey, how did everyone get hundreds? This is how. Pull Allie's out and say, she got a perfect score. Look at it. This is good work. The first one is the abstract. So I gave you more directions for the abstract because the abstracts are really, really hard to write, actually. I've done a lot of work with research students on writing an abstract. And the way we typically do it is we write down what's called a structured abstract. So I did it here for you so you can see for an example with the ACFT data. I'm actually going to run through that a little bit together for you today so you can see it. I think I showed you some graphs already, and I just picked out randomly the hand release push-ups as an example, as the response variable. So here you see the few sentences. You don't have more than a max of 3 sentences. You're just describing to a reader whether they want to read further. That's all it is. Then the methods. In the methods section, it's how you collected your data, what you did to analyze your data. It's written in the past tense. So you explore the data, what you did, like a recipe of what you did, not the results. The results come next. That's what you found. It's cold. It's unemotional. It just explains, these are the numbers. It doesn't interpret the numbers. It doesn't say, hey, therefore, blah, blah, blah. That's the next section. That's the discussion section where you say, this is what the meaning of those numbers are, but not too many sentences. And then finally, the conclusion. One of my colleagues can do it in one line. If you can do it in one line, it's great. I usually take a couple lines to get my point across for the conclusion. So that's how you put together a structured abstract.
So for the group, everyone has to do one of these? But
that's what it says on the directions.
So can we work together? Or should
yeah, you should. You'll see the author contributions. I think you should work together because it doesn't make sense to have it separately done. But this is just the directions that they've laid out.
So they are supposed to so it should be like my words on mine and then Sam's words on hers. But like if we're working together, would they overlap?
Yeah, they will. Okay. I think they have that in there because they don't want one person doing all the work and the other person not. But I have author contributions in mine. I'm really loath to like say that we shouldn't follow the directions of the overall class. So you guys can write them all together. You'll see what I put on the author contributions at the end. So to kind of get that in, Okay. Introduction. Introduction should be really short. They told me that some of the introductions come out really long. They actually told me that the literature review comes out really long. As soon as they told me that, I'm giving my students a template because it's supposed to be short. This is what is known. This is what I'm doing that's going to add. Period. Connor actually had a good example. If you don't mind sharing that with the class.
What do you mean?
Your what is known and what is you answer those pretty well, right?
I'd have to pull it up and look at it.
Yeah. Do you mind sending that to class? You don't have to do it right now. Just when you get a chance. So it should be pretty short. So I usually tell people three paragraphs maximum. One is what is known. What is the gap. Third is what are you doing to fill this gap. That's how all my research papers are like three paragraphs in the introduction. Get to the point quickly. Methods are always written in the past tense. How I've done this in Christmas colors. These are the directions. The red is the directions. The green is my example. If you see an example, that's the first thing I tell my research students. Go look at an example and see what it looks like. That's what I do. When I first looked at one of these things, I looked at an example, and then I try to match my work to the example. Colonel Watts was saying the same thing. She looked at an example. So to not have an example, I think that it's really hard to write this. And so that's what I did with the green, and I kind of lay it out here.
So when you say one paragraph, that sentence, that constitutes a paragraph, so that's like an example of what we would be able to do?
So I kind of shorten mine because I'm not doing your project, but Yeah, you would have more like, hey, you know, people have tested things, they never looked at gender-specific stuff, or they never looked at prior service.
Okay.
Nobody's really looked at how prior service is affecting it. Here's some research that's related to it, but hey, they didn't touch on this thing. Or maybe you'll find in the literature review that they did look at it, and there isn't actually a gap, you're just adding more to it. So you'll have more, because I didn't do a lit review on mine. I don't think there's anything out there on ACFT other than what we're writing, so, yet.
So it's like a 3 to 4 sentence paragraph instead of like 8 to 9 sentence.
Yeah. And if it can be, if you have any questions along the way, it's like, look, I didn't find anything, I only have one sentence, just ask me. Sometimes it is that short. Okay, any questions about the introduction part? That's your lit review, basically. So that's why they gave you that as a piece. If you can shape that lit review so you can just dump it in here, that's what they kind of wanted you to do, so to pace yourself. Methods. Methods are written in past tense. It's a recipe for what you did. Somebody writes good methods, I can recreate their project. That's the whole point. And you know, if you go to Retraction Watch, you'll see papers being pulled because people couldn't recreate their study. If they don't put enough information, you can't recreate the study. So you're just putting a recipe down here to recreate the study. When I asked you to do the literature review, I asked you to do it in that way. Tell me what keywords you searched under and where you searched. I should be able to punch those in and see what you did. It's the same thing. Like you're looking at someone else trying to recreate it. You know that study where they said small plates, if people eat off of small plates? That one's been retracted. So when these things get retracted, it's kind of embarrassing a little bit, right? So the first thing is your subjects. So you got data, Connor has data, you guys have data. So you want to make a summary table. And so you can just explain what you have, how many males and females there are, explain if it's a data set that generalizes or not. Hey, this just came from West Point. Is it a random sample or not? So describe what you have in your subjects. And the header is, I love the headers in black, those stay. You just say where you got it from. I gave you an example. So you can see what it looks like. Data exploration. What did you do? 4 graphs were made, a box plot. I described something. I don't even have the 4 plots. I just described something to give you an example. That gives you something to look at when you type up your own stuff. Linear regression models. I explain it here. For linear, I did many because I'm actually doing real research and looking at it and going, I wonder what, I wonder what, I wonder what. You don't have enough time to do that. And we had a discussion yesterday with one of the other, I think it was Major Adams, like, I don't think there's enough time to actually do the surveys and do all this stuff. That's why I was kind of pulling you away from that, just looking out for you because I think, hey, it's a great idea if you have a year-long project, but I think this is just a few months and it's a lot of points, and when you look at that, you kind of say, I just gotta, at some point, gotta get it done. And so having you guys all have data for you already, that's really nice. You're one up on everything. So here in the linear regression models, I made 4. I would at least make 3 of them, one with each explanatory variable separately and one with both of them in there. At least 3. Thanks. The next one is the hypothesis testing. So just like before, you have a null hypothesis and an alternative hypothesis. You just have more of them. Each of the explanatory variables' relationship to the response is a separate hypothesis. So I laid it out here in both symbols and words. So I had 2. I wanted to see if BMI and gender were explain the number of push-ups, hand release push-ups that could be done. I just kind of played around with that. So I would have 2 different hypotheses. I think I laid out one of them, so I didn't want to keep going. But so I have the intercept. If the intercept is 0, there's no relationship. If the intercept is not 0, there is a relationship. If the coefficient is 0, there is no association. If the coefficient is not 0, there is an association. So that's how you write it. And Major Adams said that this is hard. I don't know why. Is it clear? Like you would have multiple hypotheses listed up. Hypotheses. I actually have it spelled in the plural. Am I going too fast? Is it clear? Because I'm going to have you guys do this with IOCT data, just to make sure everybody knows how to do it. The next is the validity conditions. You need to check if the validity conditions are held. You may find, like I did with the e-mechanics study, that they don't hold. That's okay. Just say, hey, they didn't hold. Here's my graphs to show it. And I have it in the R code listed out so that this is what you're supposed to do. Enough rope.
And for that ICT data, are we going to be doing that like the R code type stuff?
Yes. So I just wanted you to run through it, just to give me a peace of mind to know that.
We're not going to be writing the ICT results on like this entire thing.
No. I'm just showing you everything laid out at once so you know what I'm talking about, so that when you go to the classrooms, I didn't give you everything, I just gave you pieces of it. And I think the next time you guys meet, I'll give you the other half of it, so that you've done everything in class that you need to do for the project at least once.
Yeah.
Okay, subjects, you need a table. So I can't imagine this, but I guess people may not have had a table. You see that I have a table and my figures are labeled. I like to put text boxes in there so that if you have a caption underneath, it starts to move around, so I don't like to see that. But there's my table. The table is given so that a person who's looking at the table, if people read these medical papers so quickly, not like math papers, we go line by line in math papers, but they just want to say, hey, what's your bottom line up front? They need to first look at the data. Do you have an equal number of females and males? I don't. In my sample, I don't. So they can see that. The first thing that my friend always looks at is, were they obese? Well, no. These are not BMIs that are with 30 or 40. They're normal BMI. And so, look, you're only working with young people. So they can see that from the table. So it's mean plus or minus standard deviation. It's right from the R code, and then you put it in table format. Make it look nice. Make it look nice, not just for you, but for me, because no one's giving a template. So if they come back and say you gave a template, well, everybody did it right. And nobody shafted me and started dumping our output on here. And then in the results section, you describe that table. I usually put when I'm writing research papers, I tell people to pick 3 figures and their tables that explain it, and then write around them. So those kind of come first, and then you write around them. So table 1 contains all this stuff, blah, 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 and I take out some key points. Like the average amount for females was this, because my response variable was the HRPUs, so I took that out. All right, data exploration. Now you want to write about your figures. There should be 1 figure, it's in the directions, per explanatory variable. No. That's in the directions. So you can't have just 1 scatter plot. You have to have 1 per explanatory variable on the x-axis, response variable on the y. I'm going to make you do that today. So then I describe each one of them.
I do have a question. So, if you're comparing, your scores, you say you can't have 1. Okay. Actually, never mind. My question is stupid. I was going to ask if I could just do, choose physical score, GPA, and a trend, and then color the dots pink and blue. That should show male and female. Because my 3 variables are GPA, physical score, and gender. So.
Yeah, but what was the outcome variable, the response variable?
We're trying to see if there's a correlation between people with higher GPAs or higher physical scores comparatively, and in order to see how that would affect, if females tend to have higher physical scores and GPAs, or males have a higher physical scores and lower GPAs.
It's a requirement of the project that they want you to have 1 per explanatory variable. So your gender.
I can do 3. I can do boys, girls.
I usually do more because I'm actually curious and want to see. So with the HRPUs, I did more stuff than that.
More scatter plots, basically.
Yeah, just because that's where you see things. But the minimum bar is you have to have 1 per explanatory variable.
So, because we're making a lot of different scatter plots, should we have a lot of different R codes going? Or should I change the same R code over?
I would have everything in 1 R code, and then print the R code out as an appendix.
Okay.
You need that R code out as an appendix. I did not put that here.
Okay.
That's a requirement in journals. Again, how do I duplicate what you've just done? Well, your R code is there, I can see it. So make sure that everything's defensible for both of us. So you see me explaining it. The figure in our work, the figures are always at the end, so you can see the figures down here. All the figures need to have captions. Again, you can't go wrong if you're duplicating what I'm doing, and if something's different, then it'll show. See, I have my figure caption here. Number of hand release push-ups versus BMI, so you can see it. I have a little bit more than that, but. And then I describe it. If you notice up here, I describe what it says in the results. In figure 1, blah, 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 blah. Figure 2 is a response variable. There's a slight positive trend with BMI, demonstrating that higher BMI is associated with higher number of push-ups completed. So I describe what I'm seeing to the reader. So the trend, the direction, all of that needs to be explained in there, or that you don't see a trend. Whatever it is you see, describe it. And this is the kind of thing, Koi, that you want to do as a group and say, this is what we see. Linear regression. Don't interpret. This is just the results. And so I list up the results, and I told you that I didn't include this. I'm going to probably have this on your November 5th class, the next week, where you see some of the residuals and those things, and this will make more sense then. And I would put all they didn't ask you to do this, but again, I feel like, look, if someone's going to come to me and say, you gave them a crush, you gave them a template, yeah, but I asked them to do more. And so I would put all the regression models inside a table so it's easy to read. And so I have, this is my BMI one, and I just put dots for the other ones. I showed them to you in class the other day. And then finally, it's discussion. That's where you interpret things. It's like the introduction. It starts off with just a short summary of what you found, the main findings, not like a verbal freight train of dumped on me. It's just one small paragraph. Then the strengths. Hey, this is obvious. The strengths of working with any West Point data is our data is unique. We're good at collecting data. We're good at recording things. Like you can think of those strengths. And I can tell you, we're about to work with Fort Jackson. West Point data is a blessing. It's a blessing. Third paragraph is the limitations. Well, working with only youth cadets is also a limitation. We don't have people who are 50 years old taking this test. So in that data set. So somebody will ask, hey, can a 50-year-old colonel actually go do the same things that a cadet can do? So that's a question that you can ask. And then in speculation, Sergeant Major Love and I talked about all this a little too long today. And can women actually, is this unfair to women? That's the ultimate question on this test. That was the question we were pondering. And my data, when I look at it, shows that strength is the correlation between. So can a woman get stronger? Well, we can't answer that here. Well, we leave it up to you for an intervention test. Can you actually build the strength, and how long will it take? So those are questions Fort Jackson's asking, because they only have 11 weeks. And then, again, conclusion. I just copied and pasted my conclusion from the abstract. You can do the same thing. Conclusion is the bottom line up front. This is what my study found, period. And then at the end, I have the author contributions. This is my pet peeve. If someone did nothing, and they're sticking their name on it, that's stealing. That's absolutely stealing. They're stealing ideas, they're stealing my work. That at the end of the day, as human beings, we're pretty worthless except for our ideas and our work ethic. That's all we really have, That's what we have. Look at Stephen Hawking, all in his chair and everything. He's not taking any ACFT. Get this. So when someone puts their name up there and says, I did this and Stephen Hawking really did, they're stealing from him, right? I don't know if you think that. I always tell my kids, at the end of the day, this is like the most important part you have. That's what makes us collectively a great species, is our brains. And we're able to do that. So list that out. And I feel like this would be enough, and I wouldn't want 3 separate things to come from your team, but it is in the directions that 3 separate things are supposed to come out. And so I said all authors prepared their own R code. They want you to do that. All authors met to agreed upon the graph and model interpretations. All authors prepared their own draft of the project, but all authors approved the drafts that were coming out as a group. So you could do something like this. This gives you an idea of what that looks like. Questions? Do not fail this one. Everybody clean house and get all of this, because the next thing you have is the big points is T. Right? And that I can't control, but this one I can.
Yeah.